Finally, up on the calendar today is House File 810 from Representative Brand. Welcome to your committee, Representative Brand. I understand you have an author's amendment, the A3.
Yes.
We move the bill first? Okay, sorry, we're moving the bill first.
Okay.
So Representative Brand is going to move that House File 810 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus tax bill. And then to the A3 author's amendment.
Yeah, the A3 author's amendment is actually some cleanup language specifically dealing with, instead of just pointing out one company that does some of the laboratory standards, we're just saying that there are multiple, and we just want to make sure that there is a laboratory standard that's being used for the line 1.24, some standards by a nationally recognized testing lab. Underwriters Laboratory is one of them. But, and then also the other language is more in line with the bill language amended from last year. Representative Acom had the bill and Senator Senjum had the bill in the Senate. And so this is just adopting that language and making it a little bit cleaner.
All right, is there any discussion to the A3? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the A3, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries, and the bill is in the form that you'd like. Representative Brand, please go ahead and tell us about your bill.
Thank you very much for making the bill as good as it can be. I would like to talk to you a little bit about this piece of climate action tax credit legislation that I propose here. It is basically kind of like our state's reaction to the Inflation Reduction Act of last year. There are a lot of different things that are in my bill that directly align with the federal policy of the Inflation Reduction Act. And this will give folks, I think, maybe an incentive if they were kind of teetering, but also hopefully it'll also provide more incentive to folks who are not able to quite reach that, that affordability range to get to that range where they can actually start doing some, either some efficiencies in their homes, taking the next step in buying a vehicle, a charging unit, air source heat pump, things like that, of that nature. You know, I think it's just important that we have this conversation as we're talking about opportunities to invest in Minnesota going forward. And so this is my bill. You know, if you look at it, there's a mechanism. It sunsets at the end of 2027. So this isn't one that goes too far forward. And what it does is it basically offers the consumer in Minnesota up to 3 different categories of options. Pick 2, get up to $2,000 in tax credit for the year. So that is my bill, and I honestly don't have, I don't know that I have anybody testifying, but let's check the audience and see.
All right, let's do that. Is there anybody who wishes to testify, all right, on House File 810? Great, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Good afternoon. My name is Anna Johnson, and I'm a Senior Public Affairs Associate with Fresh Energy. Fresh Energy is a nonpartisan nonprofit, and for the last 30 years, we've been working at the intersection of science, policy, and education to advance policy solutions to equitably achieve a carbon-neutral economy, and we're grateful for your partnership in this effort. I'm here to express Fresh Energy's support for Representative Brand's bill, HF810, as amended, which will help residents across Minnesota more easily afford a range of technologies that will lead to meaningful energy efficiency improvements, improved air quality, and reduced greenhouse gas emissions. Buildings account for about 40% of emissions economy-wide, while the transportation sector is the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. As we look out across our landscape, most buildings that exist today will still be standing in 2050. That means that to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050, in order to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, we will need to adapt and update our homes and buildings to use clean energy and to be more energy efficient. Moving from gas-powered to electric vehicles is critical to reducing emissions associated with transportation. This bill will help Minnesotans accomplish all of these goals by providing tax incentives for a wide range of technologies. Items such as induction stoves and electric vehicles come with the added benefits of improving indoor and outdoor air quality, respectively. Additionally, providing Minnesotans incentives to adopt efficient electric appliances will help insulate families from volatile price fluctuations associated with fossil fuels, leading to lower, more stable monthly utility costs. The variety of technologies covered will help individual families tailor these tax credits to their specific needs. HF810 will help Minnesotans take climate action in their own homes and help us to be a more resilient state. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and thank you to Representative Brand for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify? Yeah, please go ahead and come up. Remember to introduce yourself for the record and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is George Damian. I'm Director of Government Affairs for Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, also known as SEAM. SEAM is an industry-led nonprofit, nonpartisan nonprofit organization representing the business voice of energy efficiency and clean energy business in Minnesota. We work to educate Minnesotans about the economic benefits of transitioning to a clean energy economy where all Minnesota businesses and citizens will thrive. Our business membership is comprised of nearly 50 clean energy companies, ranging from startup businesses all the way up to Fortune 500 and 100 companies that employ tens of thousands of Minnesotans. I'm here today testifying in support of House File 810 as amended, providing Minnesotans with a refundable tax credit for energy efficiency and home improvement updates. This bill will help Minnesotans access and improve the ways they can control their energy use and cost with energy efficiency and innovative solutions now and into the future. It is a thoughtful and modest approach that takes meaningful action to assist everyday Minnesotans with the investments they are making or considering making to improve their properties with modern energy technologies. Additionally, this bill has the added benefit of supporting Minnesota's energy efficiency job sector. Today, over 42,200 Minnesotans work in energy efficiency, comprising nearly 75% of our state's almost 58,000 clean energy jobs. Making these energy improvements more accessible to more Minnesotans will continue to help grow the energy efficiency sector of Minnesota's clean energy economy. We thank the brand for bringing this bill forward. It provides a common sense approach that will help Minnesotans access innovative energy solutions that deliver increased comfort and provide additional individuals with more control over their energy use and costs. This is a good bill for Minnesota energy consumers while also supporting local energy jobs. Thank you for taking the opportunity to support this bill.
All right, thank you so much for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to testify? All right, I'm not seeing any. First, we're going to go to Representative Robbins, and then we'll come to you.
An amendment.
Okay. Is it okay if she goes first?
That's fine.
Okay, we'll just go to Representative Robbins. She was on the list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Tebke.
Oh, Brand.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies, Representative Brand. Sorry.
That's okay.
Honestly, members, I am struggling today. I know it's obvious. We just laid over a bill that would give a $1,500 tax credit capped at $70,000 for low-income families for education expenses. This bill gives a $2,000 tax credit capped at $130,000 for clean energy. And the phase out on the education credit for low-income families is $1 loss for every $4 in AGI. This one is $1 for every 30. We have got to get our priorities in order, members. And I'm for the transition to renewables. I support a lot of the intention of this bill. But when we have limited money as a committee, I am asking you all to consider where we are putting our priorities. And with great respect, because I do think you're well-intended and that this is going well, we have two very different bills in front of us. And the fiscal note for the energy tax credit we're considering is $48 million in the first year, $50 million in the second, not talking about the tails even. The education bill we just discussed, $11 million both years. As much as I want to support this, I want to encourage the committee to put our priorities on the education credit when we have limited dollars. And I'm sure Representative Norris would be happy to increase the limits and the phase outs. And I hope that as a body, as we move forward in this discussion, putting our bill together, we consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Robbins. Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to offer up the A4 amendment, if
All right.
if you feel that's an appropriate time to do such things.
Sounds good to me. So Representative Swedzinski is moving the A4 amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The A4 amendment really just kind of allows Minnesota industry. So we have a lot of manufacturers within the state of Minnesota that manufacture wood-burning stoves, boilers, the rest. That really are major job creators right here in the state of Minnesota. And this just ensures that, you know, if folks are planning on upgrading their resource acquisition, so they would be upgrading their wood stove from a non-potential EPA standardized wood stove, that if they're moving into the federally recognized EPA standards, which will decrease the amount of particulate matter, reduce the amount of smoke available to the public air, that we would count that towards that. Because, you know, if our goal is simply reduction, one thing you need to remember is that over 3 billion people worldwide burn wood and dung to cook their meals. So if this is about reducing particulate matter, wood will be burned in northern Minnesota. Wood will be burned across our state. This gives us an opportunity to say, hey, if you're going to be upgrading or you need to upgrade, I mean, no one wrote a novel about curling up next to the person you love to a ground source heat pump.
I read that one.
Right? Keep the romance alive and support my amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Swedzinski. So to the amendment, I think Representative Pinto, did you have some, you're good?
Not on this, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Representative Brand.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, talking about being curled up next to something with this weather outside. The warmer, the better, right? You know, a little bit about myself. I grew up in a household that had wood stove heat, and that wood stove was a welded box of metal that was created by somebody. And when my family bought the house, that was just there. And my grandparents actually used the potbelly stove that my great-great-grandparents actually purchased in their home. And so those aren't very efficient ways to burn the wood. And I know that there are other families across our entire state who are going through that situation. And so this might offer an incentive for them to say, hey, you know what? These are the options available. I like this option. Let's go with it. I know that in Representative Scraba's district in Tower, Minnesota, there is a manufacturer that actually produces a wood stove that actually they claim is 40% better than what the EPA standards are. And so there are opportunities out there for homegrown jobs, you know. And to go back to the actual bill itself, well, in Representative Listlegard's district, they have folks that are making photovoltaic cells, right? That was one of the things that you worked on in the past. And so these are opportunities to work with mom and pop installation shops, and then also working with these small businesses to support economy in that area. So yes, I would consider this to be a friendly amendment, and I thank you for bringing it up.
All right, so Representative Swedzinski has moved the A4 amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. All right, motion carries and the A4 is adopted. So to general discussion to the bill, Representative Davids.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank Representative Robbins for pointing out the argument on the bill we had regarding private schools and so forth. I mean, if they can afford a private school, they certainly don't need a credit. Well, if somebody can afford a Tesla, do they really need a credit? You know, first of all, this bill will have no effect on climate whatsoever, zero. But I'm kind of intrigued to support this because now you're supporting subsidizing rich Tesla owners with no limits. I mean, I kind of like that in a way, but you know, it's very interesting that in this bill, people can spend whatever they want on a car. I mean, does a Tesla owner really need a tax credit, really? And I don't see too many lower income people buying electric vehicles. So just some thoughts, but I'd like to thank Representative Robbins for pointing that glaring inconsistency out. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Davids. Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I was just going to respond to Representative Robbins and just thinking about the linking between these two bills. I think it is good to link them because long after we're all gone, I mean, we know there's climate effects right now, but it's only increasing. And so, in fact, it's our kids who need us the most to be taking action on this. And just a reminder, the U.S. Department of Defense is talking about how this is a major national security issue. It's only going to get worse. And I'll just note that, we spend a lot and should on education of young people. I'm not aware of us doing this, and this is action. We're building up action from the base. So it does make sense to me that we're start from a zero base. We need to make a bigger step. But the comparison and the linkage of those I thought is especially important because it really is our kids. The climate action is most important too. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Pinto. Representative Joachim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just, I think I heard this, I must not have had enough coffee today, but you did say that this credit is gone after 2027?
Yes, that,
Representative Brand.
Madam Chair, Representative Joachim, yes.
Representative Joachim.
Madam Chair, thank you. And just a quick reminder, and I appreciate Representative Pinto talking about the needed link too, but the bill we were talking about with the tax credits, that goes on and is not cut off after 2027. So there's a little bit of difference there.
Thank you, Representative Joachim. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question of the bill's author and maybe fiscal staff, but why was this phased out at the $150,000 and $75,000 reason, or income levels? And I've been trying to Google it, but I think you're talking about 10% or maybe 15% of the married families that are over that. But again, why was it phased out when it seems to me the idea behind the bill is to encourage people, everyone, right, to purchase things that are energy efficient. So why would it matter as a bill's author what income level they are?
We'll go first to Representative Brand and then see if there's some staff follow-up on that.
Yeah, I would
Representative
actually
Brand.
refer to Mr. Clayman on that. I think it's, from my standpoint, what I was looking at is what the federal legislation talks about in terms of limits, and then also looking at past history when it comes to what was talked about last year in a bipartisan way.
Mr. Clayman, you have anything to add?
Madam Chair, Representative Anderson, I guess I just say that this is just an income sensitivity provision that's in the bill there, and I guess the other question I have to look up that you asked was about the percentage of families, married couples that are over that threshold. I don't know the answer to that right now, but I could certainly look it up and get back to you. But otherwise, just income sensitivity.
Thank you.
Representative Anderson.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to, again, point out, and I understand some of the incomes have it, but you're talking about a small portion of, I think, the public that is over this. And if the idea is to get people to do it, again, why would we care who those people are that do it? It just doesn't make sense. It's a fairness, I'll be honest.
All right, thank you for your
Logic,
comment.
so.
Representative Anderson. Next up, Representative Davids.
Thank you, and I hadn't caught that in originally reading through the bill there. But what the bill says is rich folks are free to pollute and destroy the planet through climate change, but us poor folks aren't allowed to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Davids. Representative Olson B.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to kind of look at this. When we're talking about 50 million, then another 50 million, 62 million, 78 million over the next 4 years, when they were talking, so Representative Brands talked a lot about this income or Inflation Reduction Act, and I just want to point all the members to last summer when they were talking about it. They were assuming it would be about $30.6 billion over 10 years worth of credits, and it turns out that is potentially going to cost 4 times as much to the federal government. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I'm not saying that no one but at a 30-to-1 phase out, we're looking at individuals that married jointly filing. That's $210,000 per year income level that would have some benefit from making these expenses. This could in fact cost us like what the federal government is seeing, where it's going to be 4 times as expensive. This could in fact not be 48.8, it could be 200 million, and 200 million, and 240 million, and then 280 million. So that could be potentially very expensive. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying it could be potentially very expensive.
All right, Representative Smith.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on a couple things that was said. First of all, Representative Pinto said that most of us won't be around when this happens. I'm hoping I'll be around when there's a lot of those, so a little younger. I will say, sorry, I had to go after my side before I did what happens here. I would just like to say, there's an interesting exchange Representative Davids had where we were berating the fact that Tesla owners were going to get these tax credits, and then when we learned in the bill that we did actually make sure that it wasn't going to rich people, then we were complained about that rich people were getting tax credits. So to me, that seems like a really roundabout way of just saying that we don't want these tax credits to exist. But the idea is that this is an impending crisis, and that if we don't spend this money now in the form of tax credits, make ourselves more efficient, it's going to cost us a lot more in the long run. And I will even say, there were a lot of people 10 years ago when I was in high school that was saying we should start doing these kind of things and wasn't done. And that's why this is becoming more and more expensive, is because we've dragged our feet in doing this kind of thing. So I understand we have to be responsible about this. So I think this is a good discussion to have. But at the same time, you know, we have to have these programs, and this is a small piece of a much larger program that we have to do to act on this issue. But just wanted to point out some of those things. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Smith, for your comments on the bill and calling us all old. We appreciate it. Point taken.
Just Representative Pinto.
Fair enough.
Everyone else here is very young.
And beautiful and handsome and all the rest. To Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to respond because my name was invoked. And I just want to point out that, first of all, I don't really believe this will end in 2027. But if it does, over these next 4 years, the differential of $40 million and how that would impact our kids, current kids who are struggling to read, for the next 4 years of $40 million extra going into the education credit versus this, I think the return on investment would be much more substantial. And as you know, the representative who just spoke pointed out, this is part of a much larger effort that all of you are doing on climate change, just like there is a lot of other education spending. And so I am for the transition to renewables, but I just think we need to pay attention to the amount we're putting into this when there are other needs for low-income families that I think are a higher that I think they would say are a higher priority. So thank you.
All right. Representative Davids.
And thank you, Madam Chair. My name was invoked also, and pretty soon we will start to learn that you don't say names because that gives them the right to speak. And to anyone who would say such a thing, and I won't mention the names, if you're looking for consistency, you came to the wrong place and you'll be sorrowfully disappointed.
I thank my colleague for pointing out that we're all hypocrites in this place. So, no, you said it very nicely. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other members' names on the list. I'll do one last call before we go to our author for some closing comments. Thank you for this discussion. I do just appreciate, you know, like we're all, as we move forward with our bill, we're going to be. We live in a limited world, and we're going to have to be making those decisions about where to invest the public's dollars. And so we take that very seriously. So I thank members for bringing that up and pointing us toward that. So Representative Brand, any closing comments?
Just to close, I thank the committee for the opportunity to have a conversation. I appreciate the conversation we had. You know, I think that the tax committee, anytime you present the bill in tax committee, it's the most fun. Not trying to get extra points here, but honestly, it's a great committee, and we do have some real legitimately good conversations, and I appreciate that. It's a great bill. I hope it's included. Thank you.
Excellent. And with that, Representative Brand renews his motion, and House File 810 as amended is laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus tax bill.